Mengumumkan keberkatan tiba Duli Yang Teramat Mulia Tuanku Hajah Lailatul Syahrin Akasha Khalil, Raja Puan Muda Perlis, diiringi Div-Div Kehormat, para hadirin di pohon berdiri. Para hadirin di pohon untuk terus kekal berdiri bagi bersama-sama menyanyikan lagu Negaraku. Para hadirin di pohon untuk terus duduk. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh dan salam sejahtera. Menghadap Duli Yang Teramat Mulia Tuanku Hajah Lailatul Syahrin Akasha Khalil, Raja Puan Muda Perlis, ampun tuanku beribu ampun, sembah patik mohon diampun. Patik bagi pihak Universiti Malaya menjunjung setinggi-tinggi kasih di atas limpah perkenan Duli tuanku berangkat mencemar Duli ke Syarahan Perdana yang berbahagia Profesor Datin Dr. Raihanah Haji Abdullah pada pagi ini. Menjunjung kasih tuanku. Ampun tuanku, bagi memohon keberkatan majlis dengan sukacitanya, mempersilakan yang berbahagia Dr. Muhammad Tajuddin Samah dari Jabatan Syariah dan Undang-Undang Akademi Pengajian Islam bagi memimpin bacaan doa. Majlis dengan segala hormatnya mempersilakan.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Salatu wassalamu ala asyrafil anbiya'i wal mursalin wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. Segala pujian bagi Allah Subhanahu wa taala yang telah mengatur dan menentukan sesuatu itu berjalan dengan lancar. Setinggi-tinggi kesyukuran kami sembahkan kehadarat-Mu ya Allah, yang telah menentukan perhimpunan pada hari ini agar berjalan dengan baik telus dan sempurna. Allah jualah yang mentadbir segala urusan dan menentukan sebarang keputusan. Ya Allah, kurniakanlah taufik dan hidayah-Mu supaya perhimpunan hamba-hamba-Mu ini sampai kepada keputusan yang telah dimaksudkan. Berkatilah kami agar dapat mensejahterakan kepentingan ummah dan watan. Ya Allah, ya Tuhan kami meletakkan sepenuh pengharapan agar kedamaian dan keselamatan terjalin. Hindarilah kami dari kemungkaran serta sesuatu yang menjejaskan keamanan. Limpahkanlah rahmat-Mu dan ihsan-Mu kepada kami dalam menjalankan hidup yang penuh amanah, tugas dan kewajipan. Yang Maha Pemurah, dengan nikmat pemberian-Mu jua, kurniakanlah kepada kami serta seluruh usrah keluarga kami nikmat kesejahteraan, kesihatan dan kesempurnaan agar dapat kami berusaha menuju ke arah pembangunan dan kemakmuran yang diredai-Mu. Allah jualah yang mengetahui tujuan majlis, jadikanlah tujuan dan maksud yang diharapkan. Semoga hidup kami bertambah keimanan dan keyakinan. Naungilah dengan rahmat, bahagia, dirgahayu dan daulat ke atas duli yang maha mulia Tuanku, pemangku Raja Perlis, dan duli yang teramat mulia Tuanku, Raja Puan Muda Perlis, serta seluruh kerabat baginda. Peliharalah negara dan negeri kami dan rakyatnya dari segala angkara dan malapetaka. Kukuhkanlah perpaduan serta taat setia rakyat kepada Raja pemerintah kami yang dikasihi ini sehingga ke akhir zaman. Rabbana atina fid dunya hasanah wa fil akhirati hasanatan wa qina azabannar wa qina azabannar wa qina azabannar. Sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin.
Amin, amin, ya Rabbal Alamin. Terima kasih Dr. Mahathudin Samah atas baca doa sebentar tadi. Ampun Tuanku. Bagi meneruskan majlis, patut dengan hormat dan takzimnya, memohon perkenan duli Tuanku untuk turut mengalu-alukan tetamu-tetamu yang lain serta mengacarakan majlis ini dalam bahasa Inggeris. The Right Honourable Datuk Haji Muhammad Amran Mak Zain, Director General Syariah Chief Judge of Malaysia, Syariah Judiciary Department Malaysia, Profesor Engineer Dr. Shaliza Ibrahim, Deputy Vice Chancellor Research and Innovation, Universiti Malaya, Profesor Dr. Muhammad Fauzi Hamad, Dean, Academy of Islamic Studies, Universiti Malaya, Profesor Datuk Seri Dr. Zaliha Kamaruddin, Council Member, OIC Women Consultative Council, and Honorary Professor Datuk Dr. Ahmad Hidayat Buang, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. A very warm welcome to the inaugural lecture of Professor Datin Dr. Raihanah Abdullah, entitled Indelible Scars on an Injured Soul, an Appraisal of Islamic Cultural and Legislative Issues Related to Violence Against Women and Girls. Ampun Tuanku. The ceremony hereby invites Professor Engineer Dr. Shaliza Ibrahim and Professor Datin Dr. Raihanah Haji Abdullah to take their seats on the stage. To begin the ceremony, we would like to invite Professor Engineer Dr. Shaliza Ibrahim to deliver her opening speech.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Menghadap Duli Yang Teramat Mulia Tuanku Hajah Lailatul Syahrin Akashah Khalil, Raja Puan Muda Perlis. Ampun Tuanku beribu-ribu ampun, sembah Patik mohon diampun. Patik dengan penuh hormat dan takzimnya merafak sembah Duli Yang Teramat Mulia Tuanku sudi mencemar Duli berangkat ke Syarahan Perdana yang berbahagia Profesor Datin Dr. Raihanah Abdullah pada pagi ini. Ampun Tuanku. Patik mohon limpah perkenan Duli Tuanku untuk Patik turut mengalu-alukan dev-dev kenamaan dan para hadirin serta meneruskan sembah ucapan Patik dalam bahasa Inggeris. The Right Honourable Datuk Haji Muhammad Amran Muhammad Zain, Director General Syariah Chief Judge of Malaysia, Syariah Judiciary Department Malaysia. The Right Honourable Datuk Haji Muhammad Adib bin Hussein, Syariah Chief Judge of Selangor, Syariah Judiciary Department Selangor. Profesor Dr. Muhammad Fauzi Mahad Hamad, Dean Academy of Islamic Studies, Universiti Malaya. Profesor Datuk Sri Dr. Zaliha Kamaruddin, Council Member OIC Women Consultative Council. Honorary Professor Datuk Dr. Ahmad Hidayat Buang. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. And a very good morning. We are gathered here today to celebrate our colleague, Professor Datin Dr. Raihanah Abdullah, on the occasion of her inaugural lecture. It is my pleasure to introduce her, especially the illustrious career, numerous achievements, and significant contributions along her journey as one of our esteemed academicians. Yang berbahagia, Profesor Datin Dr. Raihanah was born on July 26, 1965 at the Kuala Lumpur General Hospital, the youngest daughter of two siblings to Haji Abdullah bin Haji Abdul Wahab and Hajah Saidah binti Muhammad Fazlullah Suhaimi. Both her parents were teachers by profession, and she's married to Honorary Professor Datuk Dr. Ahmad Hidayat Buang, and the couple are blessed with 4 children and 2 grandchildren. Professor Raihanah started her early education at Sekolah Sri Petaling, Petaling Jaya, Selangor from 1972 to 1976 before continuing her studies at Sekolah Menengah Kebangsaan Agama Ma'had Hamidah, Kajang, Selangor from 1977 to 1979. Her final years of secondary education were at the College Islam Kelang, Selangor from 1980 to 1981. Professor Raihanah began her matriculation studies at Universiti Malaya in 1982 and graduated in 1988 with a first-class degree in the Bachelor of Shariah Honours. She then continued with a master's degree at the School of Oriental and African Studies, University of London, in the field of Islamic society and cultures from 1990 to 1991. Upon her return to Malaysia, she started her career as a lecturer at the Academy of Islamic Studies, Universiti Malaya, despite her initial ambition to become a Sharia lawyer. In 2000, she was awarded the Sultan Iskandar Johor Foundation Universiti Malaya Joint Scholarship to pursue the Doctor of Philosophy degree at the International Islamic University, Malaysia, specializing in Islamic family law. 5 years later, she submitted and successfully defended her doctorate thesis entitled An Analysis of the Current Legal Mechanism in Curbing Abuse of Polygamy in Malaysia, a Socio-Legal Perspective. Upon completion of her PhD, she was promoted to become an associate professor at the Academy of Islamic Studies, Universiti Malaya, and supported by her excellent academic performance, she was promoted to professor in 2015, a promotion that recorded her as the first female lecturer from the Academy of Islamic Studies to be awarded such a title. Currently, Dr. Raihanah Abdullah is a professor at the Department of Sharia and Law. As she continues to serve at her alma mater, the Academy of Islamic Studies, she was entrusted with several administrative positions. From 2006 to 2007, she was appointed the head of the Department of Sharia and Law. And from 1st November 2018 to 30th June 2021, she served as the Director or Dean of the Academy. Again here, she made history as the first female to become the Director or Dean of the Academy of Islamic Studies, University Malaya, the position she never dreamt of fulfilling. Dr. Raihanah also held several administrative positions at the university level. In 2011, she became the director of the Center for Civilizational Dialogue, and a position that she held for 3 years. With her exceptional research record, she was later handpicked to become the Dean of the Humanities Research Cluster from 2015 to 2016, where she served to assist in the application of research expertise to the various fields in the humanities to oversee the success of collaborative research projects. Following that, she was appointed as the University Senate member from 2016 to 2017. She contributed well to the development of research at her academy by continuing on as chief editor of journal Sharia, Academy of Islamic Studies, University Malaya from 2012 to the present. She is a registered Sharia lawyer and a certified mediator whose focus revolves around issues related to Islamic family law and gender, and Islamic law and society. Her particular interests are in areas involving women's human rights, issues related to violence against women, and the human rights of the marginalized groups of society, the elderly, children, and people with disability. Over a relatively short period of time, she has successfully advanced her expertise in the areas related to the human rights of marginalized groups of society, particularly women. This is evident in her prolific publications on these topics, both in English and Bahasa Malaysia, and the numerous invitations to share her thoughts at local as well as international meetings. One of her main research focuses is on the role of women and youth in building a peaceful and harmonious coexistence. In 2018, she spearheaded the organization of an event, Women as Agents of Peace and Harmony, in conjunction with International Women's Day 2018, to promote mutual understanding between different religions, to encourage interreligious dialogue, and to celebrate the role of women from different generations, cultures, and faiths in promoting peace and harmony. In her capacity as an expert in her own area, Dr. Raihanah has been invited as keynote speaker and guest lecturer by several universities in Indonesia, Thailand, as well as in Sri Lanka. She has also delivered several public lectures in the Maldives and Japan. As a mark of recognition of her services and expertise in this area internationally, it did not come as a surprise that she was awarded in October of 2008 a fellowship under the Freeman Foundation for Salzburg Global Seminar, SCLOS, Leopoldskron, Salzburg, Australia. This also led to her being appointed an auditor of the National Commission for Academic Accreditation and Assessment, Riyadh, in 2010. Dr. Raihanah is not the kind of person to let opportunities grow and develop slip through her fingers. During her tenure as the director of Center for Civilizational Dialogue, University of Malaya, she developed interest in dialogue and conflict resolution, an interest that she honed to further strengthen her expertise. She participated in the training sessions at the International Summer Academy in Peace and Intercultural Dialogue in Vienna from 1st to 11th of September in 2013, and it was during this time that her passion for building peace and harmonious coexistence in the world intensified. As an effort to share and extend this passion, she organized several outreach events and activities related to intercultural dialogues, such as the 2013 Forum and Exhibition on Youth Interfaith Dialogue, a youth discussion on peace and harmony, and the 2012 International Symposium on Intercivilizational Dialogue towards Peace, Harmonious Coexistence, and Sustainability. These international symposiums highlighted several aspects of intercivilizational dialogue according to the Islamic perspective and the Lotus Sutra. On 22nd March 2015, the Institute of Oriental Philosophy invited Dr. Raihanah to a public lecture in Tokyo, Japan, entitled Women and Youth in Civilizational Dialogue. Her message of congratulations to the Institute of Oriental Philosophy, Tokyo, Japan, in celebrating their 52nd anniversary was published in the February 4th, 2014 edition of the Senkyo Shimbun, Japan's third largest newspaper with about 6 million daily circulation. Her emphasis on the importance of acceptance and respect amongst the diverse cultures and faiths to achieve a harmonious world was one of the points highlighted by the newspaper. She was also featured as advocating the need to bridge the world through dialogue in order to achieve the acceptance and respect. She was invited by the King Abdullah bin Abdul Aziz International Center for Interreligious and Intercultural Dialogue, KAICID, Vienna, Austria, together with 500 other religious leaders around the globe to participate in the Global Forum on the Image of the Other, Interreligious and Intercultural Education, which was held in November of 2013 in Vienna. Her growing passion in this area encouraged her to train as a dialogue practitioner at the prestigious King Abdullah bin Abdul Aziz International Center for Interreligious and Intercultural Dialogue. Upon submitting her final project and initiative, Youth Dialogue, to live and to learn together, and successfully completing the training course, she was awarded the International Fellow of KAICID. This acknowledgement was definitely a much welcome additional feather in her cap. In 2011, at the 38th session of Council of OIC Foreign Ministers in Kazakhstan, she was elected as one of the 18 commissioners in the Independent Permanent Human Rights Commission, Organization of Islamic Cooperation, representing Malaysia. This is the first time the OIC introduced the role of commissioners, and Dr. Raihanah is very proud to be one of the 4 women elected as among the 18 pioneering commissioners. She served as the Commissioner of Human Rights of OIC from 2012 to 2019. Her involvement with human rights issues at the international levels gave her several opportunities to participate in fact-finding missions to conflict zones. During her tenure as the Human Rights Commissioner, among the experiences that proved to be immensely valuable was her visits to Muzaffarabad, Pakistan, and Cox's Bazar in Bangladesh. In 2017, the government of Pakistan invited the IPHRC delegation for a visit to Islamabad and the state of Azad Jammu and Kashmir in March of 2017. Following that, she was involved with the fact-finding visit to the Rohingya refugees camp in Cox's Bazar, Bangladesh. During these unforgettable visits, she had the privilege to personally interact with women victims who experienced violations of their basic human rights. These heart-wrenching narratives spurred her to advance the plights of these victims to a wider audience. Her efforts have not been in vain. In 2018, she was appointed as the Vice Chairperson of the IPHRC OIC from August 2018 to 2019, as well as the coordinator of the Standing Mechanism for Monitoring and Reporting on Human Rights Violation in the India-occupied Kashmir. In this capacity, she was empowered to speak on these issues to committees and organizations that can propel positive changes. On the 4th of February, at the British Parliament, she delivered a poignant speech on human rights violations faced by Kashmiri people, in particular violations against women. Based on her extensive expertise, she has been appointed to sit on several government agencies that address these issues, as well as on similar local committees. In addition, at the national level, she was appointed as one of the working committees in the Family Support Unit under the Department of Sharia Judiciary Malaysia and the think tank of Sult Committee from 2021 to 2023 at the same department. She also served as a member of the Hakam Committee under the Selangor Sharia Judicial Department, and she served as a member of the Sharia and Civil Law Technical Committee under the Department of Islamic Development Malaysia, JAKIM, from 2020 to 2022. Moreover, her passion in the subject of Islam and gender gained her the position of an expert panelist in dealing with Muslim women issues under the Department of Islamic Development Malaysia, as well as a fellow of the Tunku Azizah Center for Women's Studies, Islamic University Malaysia. Over the last few years, she has been frequently invited to appear on local television programs to speak on matters related to human rights, to women's rights in the Islamic perspective. More significantly, her involvement in these outreach programs and the activities act as eye-opener, allowing her to see for herself the situation in the society, in particular the women and children on the ground level. Towards the end of the 1990s, she joined as an ordinary member the Lembaga Kebajikan Perempuan Islam Malaysia, which is a non-governmental organization Within months, she was appointed as EXCO in the organization, and through this platform, she had the opportunity to create legal awareness, share views, and delve directly into the needs of society, especially of women and children. Despite her commitments, she found time to carry out volunteer work, as she considered her active involvement with volunteering activities a crucial part of her personal and professional growth. Through her 32 years of service at the academic realm in University Malaya, she has advocated for reforms to Islamic laws regarding women, highlighting their unique positions in society and advocating for women empowerment. As an advocate of women's human rights, Dr. Raihanah lives by the motto of "Be gracious in speech, kind words echo to eternity." As she continues to engage in spreading awareness and acceptance of peaceful coexistence through intercultural dialogue. For her outstanding initiatives in advancing Islam and bringing to light community issues, focusing particularly on legal matters affecting women at the national level as well as globally, she was awarded by the government of Malaysia with the National Maulidur Rasul Award 2017. These storied words are only mere fractions of her true impact and accomplishments throughout the years. To describe her in full would be taking too much of our time, and I'm sure that we are all eager to listen to the inaugural lecture and gain from her knowledge and wisdom. With that, I end my speech. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Engineer Dr. Shaliza. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, next, I have the privilege of inviting our main speaker for today to present and share her wisdom. Please welcome Professor Datin Dr. Raihanah binti Haji Abdullah.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Menghadap ke bawah duli yang teramat mulia, Tuanku Hajah Lailatul Syahrin Akasha Khalil, Raja Puan Muda Perlis. Ampun Tuanku. Terlebih dahulu, Parti ingin merafak sembah menjunjung kasih yang tidak terhingga di atas perkenan duli Tuanku mencemar duli berangkat ke Majlis Syarahan Perdana Parti pada pagi ini. Sesungguhnya keberangkatan duli Tuanku ke majlis ini ibarat sudah seri, bertambah peri. Sudah ceria, bertambahlah gembira. Ampun Tuanku. Izinkan Patik turut mengalu-ngalukan dev-dev kenamaan yang lain serta meneruskan ucapan Patik dalam bahasa Inggeris. Ampun Tuanku. The Right Honourable Datuk Haji Muhammad Amran Mak Zain, Director General, Syariah Chief Judge of Malaysia, Syariah Judiciary Department Malaysia, Profesor Engineer Dr. Shaliza Ibrahim, Deputy Vice Chancellor Research and Innovation University Malaya, Profesor Dr. Muhammad Fauzi bin Hamad, Dean Academy of Islamic Studies University Malaya, Profesor Datuk Seri Dr. Zaliha Kamaruddin, Council Member OIC Women Consultative Council, my dear Honorary Professor Datuk Dr. Ahmad Hidayat Buang, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Assalamualaikum and good morning. Thank you so much for being here. I know how busy you are, so I really appreciate your attendance. I would like to start by sharing with you some of my own experiences in relation to this rather large topic. After spending more than 30 profound years in academia and working relentlessly with various NGOs, I can attest that cases related to violence against women have become increasingly prevalent in every part of the world, be it in public or private domain. Although I was a young lecturer back then, I still recall vividly my first ever experience dealing with a victim of domestic violence. a wife came to my office seeking help as her husband had repeatedly beaten her to the point where concealing the bruises on her arms and feet that clearly needed urgent medical attention is impossible. After confiding in me, I advised her to report the abuse or file for divorce in the Sharia court, but she refused to do so. Several years later, the victim returned to me, having decided to make an application to the court, most probably to save herself from further physical, emotional, and mental suffering, and likely because she was not able to bear the sufferings any longer. Sadly, there are even more tragic and similar gruesome cases seemed to be of common news reported in the daily newspapers, both locally and internationally, serving as lessons that we must take heed of to effectively and permanently eradicate from our society. The consequences of these inhuman and horrifying acts of violence always end in terrible consequences to the victims, as they are not only left with deep and appalling physical scars, but also horrific permanent disfigurements and in some cases death. According to the World Health Organization, 1/3 of all women globally have directly affected by violence acts, including infants, girls, adults, or older women. However, the statistics may be higher due to unreported cases. Victims often fail to report such incidents for various reasons, such as accepting violence as a normal occurrence. The victims are also too embarrassed to report to the authority. They are often made to understand that to make the incident public is similar to open their can of worms and directly air their dirty laundry for society to judge and be entertained. It would not just embarrass them, but also their husbands and families. Furthermore, to make matters worse, the legislation on violence against women is poorly implemented. I personally have accumulated a collection of tell-all extracted from the extensive available literature on violence against women, as well as from first-hand narrative shared by real victims. Regrettably, many victims feel resigned and believe that they have no choice but to endure the abuse and be subservient to their predicament as their destiny or kismet. In this lecture, I will discuss the concept of violence against women and how it is perceived globally. I will share with you some of the heart-wrenching narratives of the victims so you will have a better understanding of how it is like to have no choice but to be subjugated and acquiescence to what others force onto you. Finally, I will take you on a journey to explore ways to eliminate violence against women in the 21st century. Let's start by discussing about the global overview of violence against women. Violence against women and girls, a broad term that encompasses different forms of violence that involves women and girls, is often misapprehended by society as only pertaining to domestic violence. However, in reality, violence had occurred in both the private and public environments involving family and family members. In recent years, the definitions of violence against women and girls has expanded to include gender-based violence, recognizing that this issue is not limited to women alone. The used term gender-based violence was first seen in the United Nations Declarations on the Elimination of Violence Against Women, DIVAL, 1993, Article 1 of the Declaration, which defines violence against women as an act of gender-based violence that causes physical, sexual, or psychological harm or suffering to women, including threats of such acts or coercion or arbitrary deprivations of liberty, regardless of whether it occurs in public or in private life. Just as women can become victims of GBV, men can also fall prey to GBV if the perpetrator targets them based on their gender. This means that gender-based violence is not limited to only women, but can affect anyone regardless of their gender. It's evident that violence against women is a crucial issue that doesn't require an interpreter to explain its severity. This unwarranted phenomenon is a never-ending social problem that should concern not only the affected country, but also other nations and societies globally. Violence against women is an abusive act that has unimaginable and long-lasting impacts on women, their children, families, neighbors, and the community at large. The increasing statistics of VAW are even more alarming today. Acts such as sexual assault, sexual harassment, domestic violence, snatch theft, women trafficking, and harmful traditional practices like early and forced marriage, honor killing, child pornography, sorcery, and dowry death are all forms of violence against women. We fear that without adequate efforts and actions taken to address this problem, the victims may not only endure prolonged physical and mental trauma, but also end up losing their lives. The next point, I am going to cover selected types of VAW to discuss. Let's start with domestic violence. Zainab Noor, whose case made the headline in Pakistan in 1994 for the sophisticated level of sadism it involved, had committed no wrong. She had been married to her cousin, who is an Islamic cleric at the local mosque. Zainab frequently experienced domestic violence at the hands of her resentful husband. Her husband inserted metal rods into her private parts and connected them to electricity, destroying her vagina, rectum, and bladder. Despite undergoing reconstructive surgery in London, Zainab was left permanently impaired and will have to use colostomy and urine collection bags for the rest of her life. Her husband was initially convicted to 10 years imprisonment and a fine of 210,000 rupees for each of the 3 major organs that he had destroyed. Against medical evidence, he had claimed that Zainab had suffered burns when she tripped on a stove. On appeal, the 3 10-year terms were reduced to 1 by Lahore High Court, and he left prison in 2001 after he settled the fine. In 2002, in response to Zainab's challenge, the Supreme Court ruled that he should be rearrested and serve another 20 years because the physical damage his wife had incurred was caused by 2 separate rods inserted into her private parts and therefore 2 separate injuries. This real account of women suffering from domestic violence is just a glimpse of the alarming reality that plagues our society. Such cases are no stranger to legal and medical practitioners, as well as women activists who defend victims of violence and advocate awareness to access justice. Tragic cases reported in daily newspapers, locally and abroad, serve as lessons and highlight the urgent need to effectively and permanently eliminate this grave problem. The horrifying and inhumane acts of violence always leaves not only physical scars, but also result in permanent disfigurements and in some cases death. Among the many violent cases, domestic violence involve physical, sexual, and psychological and economic abuse has become the most prevalent and recorded the highest statistics worldwide. These cases of domestic violence occur in developed and underdeveloped countries alike, such as Arab countries, the United Kingdom, India, Japan, Brazil, South Africa, Australia, and also Malaysia. Domestic violence truly knows no boundaries and can happen anywhere. There are several contributing factors that lead to domestic violence. Culture is one such factor, as some perpetrators view physical violence like beating as a means to discipline their partners. Shockingly, even marriages that initially began with love and happiness can become abusive. Domestic violence can happen to couples who marry willingly and those who are forced into marriage. In cases of forced marriage, the failure to implement existing law leaves victims unprotected. While laws do offer some protection, domestic violence often occurs unpredictably and in various situations. Other possible causes of domestic violence include past experience of physical violence. Those who experience abuse in childhood may replicate the behavior and repeat the cycle in their own homes. However, there are even those who have not experienced violence in their family history who may still become victims in their own marriages. Domestic violence can happen to families with different socio-economic backgrounds, whether affluent or living in poverty. Additionally, existing issues such as financial strain or unemployment can trigger anger in a spouse and lead to abusive behavior. Moreover, emotional abuse is more difficult to detect, such as symptoms of neglect or denial of rights, insults, threats, and degrading of a victim. Another form of abuse that has both physical and emotional consequences is sexual abuse. For example, molesting children or the elderly, deviant sexual behavior, coercion, and other threats for sexual relations all represent elements of violence. Acid attacks is one of the common domestic violence. Generally, it is an act that involves the splashing of acid or other corrosive substance on a victim's face or body, scarring skin tissues and damaging their bodies to an extent that victim is tortured or killed. For example, acid attacks involve sulfuric acid, nitric acid, and or hydraulic acid. Obviously, these types of attacks represent forms of violence often carried out by perpetrators because of anger, blind jealousy, or hatred. Economic abuse rarely occurs in isolation, can also be domestic violence when it occurs together with other forms of domestic abuse such as physical, sexual, and psychological abuse. Finances can be a source of stress in a relationship. When there are financial problems, bills to pay, and considerations to save money for future use can be sources of conflict. Several years ago, this is my experience. Several years ago, I encountered a case involving domestic violence through emotional abuse. The husband and wife were both government servants, but because the wife earned more than the husband, he forced her to provide him with a credit card to buy things he wanted instead of household necessities. This caused his wife to feel depressed as she needed to find a side income to cover household operations and expenses for their children. The husband worked the night shift and the wife regularly prepared breakfast, sent the children to school, and made confectionaries for additional income. However, when her husband came home after his night shift, he would call her upstairs to have sexual intercourse without considering her condition. She was extremely tired and fatigued from taking care of the family, doing household chores, and working outside for extra money. These situations continued regularly, and her colleagues at work noticed her these depressions. Eventually, the wife found the situation unbearable and filed for divorce. Environmental changes can have a profound impact on women, particularly in countries where agriculture is a significant economic resource. Natural disasters such as floods, typhoons, prolonged droughts can cause agricultural resources to become scarce, resulting in decreased income and financial instability for women. This can lead to increased vulnerability to violence against women, as financial stress and strain on family relationships can continue to an already tense and unstable environment. Now, we move to another types of violence against women, honor killing. This story takes place in a community in the United Kingdom. Shafilia Ahmad, who is 17 years old, was the eldest of 5 siblings, and her parents were from Pakistan. In this incident, Shafilia's parents killed her in front of her siblings at their North England house because her parents disapproved of her lifestyle and her friendship with a non-Muslim white guy. Her parents were so angry because they could not control her, and even this argument went on for several months. One day, Shafila's parents abruptly shoved a plastic bag into her mouth and covered her nose until she suffocated and died. To cover up what they have done, her parents then dumped her daughter's body and reported Shafila missing to the police. Sadly, a year later, Shafila's parents were prosecuted after the body of their daughter was discovered by the police. During the trial, Alisha, Shafila's younger sister, testified in court that their parents have abused Shafila by dragging her and locking her in a room without giving her food and while threatening her with knives and firearms. In her declaration, Alisha claimed that her sister was caught between living in modern life and her family's expectations that she should dress traditionally and consent to arranged marriage. Furthermore, Alisha added that they witnessed the agony of her sister suffocating and gasping for air on the night she was slain. But when their parents unexpectedly appeared, the siblings rushed upstairs, where Alisha claimed she spotted a red blanket that her father had brought with him and was certain it was her sister's body. Consequently, the court sentenced their parents to life jail in murder. On sentencing, the judge told the couple, "Your concerns about being shamed in your community was greater than the love of your child, a desire that she understood and appreciated the cultural heritage from which she came is perfectly understandable. But on expectations that she lives in a sealed cultural environment separate from the culture of the country in which she lived was unrealistic, destructive, and cruel." The judge added, "You killed one daughter, but you have blighted the lives of your remaining children." And honor killing, as a customary killing, is the killing of a family or clan member by one or more other family members, usually men, usually because the perpetrators believe the victim has brought shame upon the family, clan, or community. Interestingly, in 2013, I had the opportunity to attend a professional course in conflict in management and conflict resolutions in Vienna. During the training, one of the course speakers made an intriguing claim that honor killings were rooted in Islam. I could not help but to speak up and correct her statement. Honor killings do not originate from Islam. If it did, how would you explain the fact that many other Muslim countries, including those in Southeast Asia, reject the practice? In many cultures, women are considered as property to a family, especially to a male family members. Ultimately, this means that a male family member often determines the future or fate of the family's female members. Therefore, honor killings are considered punishments for women. There are several characteristics associated with honor killing incidents. Communities often justify honor killings as a way to preserve social and cultural norms and religious traditions, especially when it is committed by multiple perpetrators. In case of honor killing or honor-based violence, it is widely recognized that these crimes represent men's dominations over women, despite its historical classification as a cultural tradition. Thirdly, women and girls trafficking. In the 21st century, human trafficking is often referred to modern slavery. The criminal activity involves routes used to transport victims, especially women and children, into Western Europe. The most frequently used routes originate from Southeast Asia countries, including Vietnam, Thailand, and the Philippines. Malaysia is often used as a transit point before the victims are moved into Europe. I vividly recall the time my colleagues and I attended Mundos de Mujeres in Madrid, Spain in 2008. During the conference, one of the keynote speakers, a victim and survivor of trafficking Southeast Asian countries, shared her harrowing experience. She mentioned that Malaysia served as a transit point for these international crimes before embarking the victims onto their final destinations in Europe. While clear that Malaysia represented a stopover point in these crimes, there is no evidence to support these trafficking syndicates ever worked within Malaysia, nor was there any coordination originating in Malaysia in the legal seizure of these victims. I was interested in conducting an in-depth study on how the law is against human trafficking, specifically regarding women and girls. However, my colleagues reminded me of the inherent dangers involved in such research due to the involvement of international mafia groups operating across multinational borders. Ultimately, I had to cancel my intention to further my study on women and girls trafficking due to the risk involved. Human trafficking is a global problem that affects millions of people each year. Women and children from countries that are known to be source of human trafficking are particularly vulnerable, as they often disappear without a trace due to the lack of proper documentations. Victims of human trafficking are treated as commodities rather than as human beings. Once purchased, perpetrators have full control over their victims. In many cases, poverty drives families to sell their daughters, who are particularly vulnerable to exploitations. These families often face financial difficulties due to factors such as poor harvest or lack of access to healthcare. Selling our daughter may seem like a way to restore financial stability, but these decisions have devastating consequences. The lack of legal protection and support systems for human trafficking leaves these women feeling trapped and unable to escape their desired situations. In fact, the living conditions create scenarios where many women become willing victims in the human trafficking trade solely because they believe they have no other choice. Female genital mutilations. My next types of violence against women. A few years back, a lady originally from Sudan whom I know came to my office. We chatted casually about various things, one of which was the practice of female genital mutilation in her society. She felt comfortable enough to share with me her personal experience with FGM. During the FGM process, she said she left the right sides. The left and right sides of her labia were stitched together to form a covering over her urethra and vagina. Only a small hole, the size of diameter of pen, was left open for urine and menstrual fluid to flow out. The procedure was performed on her when she was still a little girl. As a consequence, she grew up experiencing long-lasting pain, especially during menstruations and urination. When she got married, in order to have sexual intercourse and to deliver her children, she had to undergo an operation to cut upon the covering over her vagina, which had further narrowed as she grew older. As a woman, I cannot imagine the agony she must have suffered when she underwent the surgery to bring her vagina back to its original state. I do not think it can ever become like original anymore, not after it has been sewn up like a piece of cloth and then reopened and reconstructed. She said the pain she had to endure prevented her from having intercourse with her husband for months after the reconstruction procedure. This story illustrates how FGM had left a long-lasting negative impact on this lady's life. I then asked her if she will continue to perform FGM on her daughters. She was quick to respond that her husband and herself absolutely do not agree to have FGM performed on their children. They both disapprove of the FGM and strongly believe that it should not be practiced anymore and anywhere because there is no benefit from it. Women who are victims of FGM end up traumatized for life, both mentally and physically. What she had experienced is referred to WHO as infibulations type 3 of FGM, where the opening of the vagina is narrowed by creating a cover of it. The purpose of the practice is usually to preserve virginity until marriage. But to what end? FGM is a cultural practice of society that has no health benefits in all aspects. The FGM procedures involve severing the clitoris, which includes the partial or total removal or the external tissue of the female genitalia for no medical reason. In most cases, these procedures do not use anesthetic and include the use of crude instruments such as razor blades, sharp rocks, and knives. Sometimes a scalpel is used, which is a surgical knife. The effects of FGM can be kidney infections, fistula, genital tissue swelling, and various problems that a girl will face in future. Communities that practice FGM typically target girls under the age of 15 or approaching puberty. Furthermore, girls who undergo FGM are often informed by their communities that procedure represent a positive actions as they enter adulthood. Meanwhile, within communities, there is a contention from their perspective that FGM prevent various diseases, especially cancer, jaundice, vaginal discharge, and parasites. Additionally, they claim that FGM has its own health benefit because they think FGM cleans breast milk. Of course, when compared to modern science and medicine, this is a myth. Furthermore, there is a sociological pressure that causes the practice to continue. In many instances, engaging the FGM ensures young girls transition into respectable women. Early and forced marriage. Early and forced marriage occur because it is closely related to poverty and hunger. This implies that if a family is small, there won't be many people who need to be fed by the head of the family. A male head of the family often resorts to a last solution such as arranged child marriage, as related in the book Scars Across Humanity. I was given to my husband when I was little. I'm a teenage now. I don't know, and I don't even remember when I was given because I was too little. It was my husband who brought me up, explains Kanas from Auditorium. Given that the woman is considered eligible to a bribe, if the girl's virginity is still intact, these circumstances may result in the protections of honor and dignity. Previously, the girl's family had control over her sexuality. Now her husband does. Although there are some families who do not approve child marriage, there are other problems that contribute vow, such as kidnapping of girls or becoming victims of trafficking. Since this problem is often deeply rooted in cultural tradition, it requires a human rights and child protection approach. However, some scholars argue in favor of this practice, claiming that it preserves the respect and dignity of the family. With advice from United Nations Secretary General His Excellency Ban Ki-moon in 2013, I urge governments, community and religious leaders, civil society and private sectors, and families, especially men and boys, to do their parts to let girls be girls, not brides. Sexual violence in a war zone. War is the rape as a weapon of war can become ingrained and persist into post-conflict period. In a shattered, brutalized society where law and order are flouted, women become easy targets for rage. War is a devastating event that was inflicted untold suffering on billions of people throughout history. Unfortunately, women often bear the brunt of its horrors. In 2017, I was assigned to the OIC Human Rights Missions in Cox's Bazar refugee camp in Bangladesh. I spoke to the women victims, shared their experience with me of becoming victims of violations of women's human rights. In our conversations, I found that the reason they were victimized was due to the political crisis in their country, which led them to flee to neighboring countries for safety. When I privately asked the United Nations volunteer about cases of sexual assault, they confirmed that such cases did exist. However, when I requested to speak with the victims or to make a report to the volunteer refused on the grounds of confidentiality. They explained that the victims were still in traumatic state and that their identities could not be revealed. I was moved by the poignant narratives of the female victims, a profound sense of despair and grief washed over me, as their tragic fate evoked a visceral emotional response. However, my husband's remark that as a human rights commissioner, my role was to stay composed in the face of such atrocity, serve as a powerful reminder of the urgency and gravity of the situations, amplifying my resolve, the fight for justice and equality for all. Dekat rumah dia cakap jangan menangis. Sexual violence has often been used as a tactic of war. It is not just rape out of control, but rape under orders as means of pursuing military, political, and economic ends. The use of sexual violence in conflict zones has been fairly common. The scale of prevalence of such sexual violence has spotted to some extent a sense of resignation and the notion that is merely an inevitable and unavoidable evil as a consequence of war. During the armed conflict in Bosnia and Herzegovina, widespread and systematic sexual abuse of Bosnian Muslims by Bosnian Serbs occurred, constituting a crime against humanity under international law. Similarly, in Rwanda, Tutsi women were subjected to rampant sexual violence that was classified as an act of genocide by the International Criminal Tribunal. Tragically, these atrocities were often witnessed by members of the public or the victims' own family and community. Such heinous incidents of sexual violence have occurred in other conflict zones like Darfur, the Soviet, and Eastern Republic of Congo. Conversely, in some conflicts such as Israel and Palestine, sexual violence remains limited despite other forms of violence against civilians. Notably, some armed groups like the Salvadoran and Sri Lankan insurgencies have prohibited their combatants from engaging in sexual violence against victims. We have discussed the global overview on violence against women, and now I would like to talk about the Sharia dimensions in selected aspects of vow. Scholars have argued that during the Jahiliyyah period, women were accorded inferior status that was reflected in the customs, practices of the Jahiliyyah people in matters concerning family. Women were also treated as commodities and had no value or rights as human beings. However, the Quran granted women a more elevated status, emphasizing their equal respects and rights as men. It is clear that reforms brought upon by the Quran has established certain rules and regulations concerning family and social economics. These reforms aim to ensure that women were not victimized and were instead empowered through the establishment of their rights within these domains. The need of legal reform in certain Muslim countries emerged as a response to the perceived inadequacy of classical interpretation of Islamic law in addressing the accumulating day-to-day issues faced by society. This, however, does not necessarily indicate that the classical interpretations of the Quran and Hadith, as reflected in the classical Islamic law, was inadequate in safeguarding the status of women. Nevertheless, the Quranic revelations and Hadith have clear guidance on the specific rights of women and even elevate the status of women in society. However, social norms and customs are often conflated with Jahiliyyah practices, which can hinder women from exercising their rights as human beings, daughters, wives, and members of the family, of their communities. Islam is the religion of peace, and achieving peace requires submissions and obedience to God, the Creator. Consequently, Islamic law unequivocally prohibits any act that can result in harm to others. The Sharia dimension, there are some aspects in using the Prophet Muhammad's hadith, La darara wa la dirar, that can be applied in violence against women in worldwide perspectives. The Islamic legal maxim, ad-dararu yuzal, is a fundamental principle in Sharia that emphasizes the importance of preventing harm to society and promoting its well-being. In many cultures, women are considered as property, especially to male family members, who often determine the future and fate of the family members. Honor killings are therefore considered punishments for women. It is not surprising that during my previous training programs, the speaker, as I mentioned before, made incorrect remarks asserting that honor killing resulted from Islamic tenets. Now let's turn to female genital mutilation. This issue has been debated by United Nations since 1952, but it gained more attention in the 1990s when the WHO categorized female circumcisions, khitan for daughters, as a form of FGM. There is evidence that FGM, also known as Farah circumcisions, has been practiced in some Muslim countries since before the development of Islam. Despite it being prohibited in Islam, Farah circumcision is known to be severely harmful to the female reproductive organs is continued to be practiced in certain Muslim countries. While some scholars disagree with WHO inclusion of khitan for daughters in the category of FGM, arguing that it is not as harmful as other types of FGM, such as infibulations, it is important to recognize that any form of FGM is a violation of women's rights and should be prohibited. However, khitan for daughters has been integrated for a long time and has been associated with Islamic religious practices for some Muslim countries that still practice. Most relate that religious teachings and customs are the reasons why this practice is still carried out until now. Malaysia was also recorded as one of the countries that practice khitan for daughters. The scientific debate about female circumcisions or khitan for daughters began to receive attention, and the discussion was quite heated in the context of medicine and the religious point of view, especially in Malaysia. Khitan for daughters is widely practiced in Malaysia primarily due to its association with Islamic teachings and tradition. However, medical studies have shown no evidence of medical benefits from the procedure, and it does not cause any deformity of the genitals. Despite this, the practice continues to this day, with some parents opting for the procedure to be performed by qualified healthcare professionals to minimize complications. While there is ongoing debate on khitan according to Sharia, the decisions to circumcise young girls remains with the parents, with both circumcised option being permissible under Islamic law. Khitan for daughters in Malaysia has a religious and legal dimension. According to the Shafi'i school of thought, which is the predominantly followed in Malaysia, khitan for daughters is mandatory, as decreed by the Malaysian National Fatwa Council in 2009 and 2016. However, other fatwas from the Council in 2012, Johor, and 2017, Perlis, demonstrate a lack of consensus on this issue. This is because the interpretations of the relevant Quranic verses is not straightforward and depends on the unique Sharia methodology employed by traditional scholars. This methodology can lead to changing views and fatwas over time, reflecting the flexibility of Sharia law. Ultimately, the legal status of female circumcision in Malaysia remains open to interpretations, and the decisions to undergo the procedure is left to individual families. Interestingly, there is a myth that khitan for daughters is practiced to suppress female libido and for maintaining personal hygiene. The fatwa in place has stated that there is no scientific evidence on this matter. In fact, the Quran commands both men and women should lower their gaze in the presence of opposite sex and to guard their private parts in order to avoid immoral behavior. Surah An-Nur verse 30. Why only women to suppress female libido? Additionally, washing with running water is the most appropriate way to maintain the cleanliness of the female reproductive organs. Therefore, there is no unanimous religious or scientific basis for the practice of khitan for daughters. Based on the discussions of the fatwas in Malaysia, it can be concluded that there is no consistency in the view of the practice of female circumcisions, whether it is an obligatory or permissible practice. This is more clearly seen the practice as a custom and culture and can be changed according to time and circumstances, especially in Malaysia. The next issue, I'd like to focus on the wife beating based on Surah An-Nisa, verse 34. In January 2007, a Muslim woman of Moroccan descent who lived in Germany applied to the German court to speed her up her divorce trial from her husband as she had been physically abused by him. However, the application was denied by Judge Winter due to two reasons. First, according to Judge Winter, the beating is a normal and commonly done in the Moroccan culture. Second, the judge seemed to have her own understanding of Surah An-Nisa, verse 34, that is, it is permissible for a husband to beat his wife. Clearly, the Judge Winter herself was not a learned and qualified Islamic scholar. She was inaccurately interpreted the verse, and Judge did this service by misinterpreting the sacred scripture of another regime and perpetuating injustice. Some may claim that there are literature that deem to allow the act of wife beating, for instance, under the Surah An-Nisa, verse 34. From this verse, some may literally interpret this as allowing the head of the family, a husband, to exercise his dominance against women, in this case, his wife. The contemporary scholars have even understood it as God-given power to husbands to strike disobedient wives. The classical Muslim scholars interpret as men are the head of the family, they need to guide women, and if women disobeys him, and she has to be physically punished. An alternative interpretation of the surah discussed above has emerged from the linguistic perspective, which challenged the traditional understanding of the text. A close analysis of the Arabic word idribuhunna, which has been translated as beating, it reveals that it does not have the same meaning as commonly understood. This observation has been made by scholars who have analyzed the language used in the verse. Instead, this verse can be interpreted as a means of restoring domestic harmony and promoting reconciliation, rather than as a justification for physical disciplines towards women. The root word of idribuhunna is daraba, which has multiple meanings, including to travel, to explain, to have sexual relations, to draw over, to set forth, and many other meanings as stated in the Quran. These various meanings of daraba in other verses of the Quran provide evidence that the Quranic verse is using idrubuhunna to mean as isolation, separation, or initiating a period of cooling off. Finally, it is noteworthy that scholars have highlighted the importance of the Prophet Muhammad's conduct as a model for behavior. A multitude of hadiths attest to the Prophet Muhammad's high regard for women. The teachings of the Prophet Muhammad on kindness towards women and his many hadiths prohibiting wife beating provide evidence that the daraba cannot be construed to mean to strike violently and cause harm to another. What should be clear at this point is that there is no consensus on the correct interpretation of the Quran 434, or even on whether on such single interpretation was intended. Recently, significant challenges have been posed to the traditional reading of 434. This interpretation have by no means been universally accepted or praised. Furthermore, some contended that this verse was relatively unproblematic before the modern age. In other words, they argue that Muslims did not think twice about the existence of the beating verse as an ethical issue until the post-colonial era and exposure to Western ideas about women's rights. In reality, advising and explaining to one's wife in a gentle and loving manner is often more effective than physical punishment, as women typically respond positively to gentleness. Through scholarly debate on domestic violence in Islam, society has come to realize that problems cannot be solved through violence, but rather through calmness and gentleness. Since many contemporary scholars of the opinion that the word daraba does not mean actually hitting the wife, but to just graze the wife's skin. On the other hand, it is possible to infer that the word daraba as the husband resorting to violently hitting objects in the house, such as walls, tables, furniture, or crockery, to vent his anger or to warn his wife instead of hitting the wife. Perhaps an alternative way to redress or to rectify the feeling of dissatisfaction or anger with the wife and yet maintain a harmonious relationship with each other is to gently but firmly tap and hold the wife's hand instead of performing unnecessary violence. Therefore, we must continue to promote a culture of peace and non-violence while recognizing and respecting the diverse perspectives and interpretations within our community. In a nutshell, we should take concern about this domestic violence and offer to solve it even if it is not occurring in our immediate vicinity. In order to effectively address of no-shoes behavior exhibited by either spouse, it is necessary to emphasize the value of islah, ihsan, and taqwa, as mentioned in the Quran. The use of physical violence or beating as a means of resolving marital conflicts should be unequivocally rejected, given that such actions tend to engender a host of new and complex problems that have the potential and worsen or even irreparably damage to the husband and wife relationship. Instead, the imperative that alternative approach be taken, as physical violence or beating may serve to impede the possibility of any future reconciliations between the parties involved. While we have limited time, I will skip the title of Violence Against Women, International, Regional and National Initiatives, then I will continue the following issue that focus on empowering women scarred by gender-based violence amidst 21st century challenges. VAW can also have long-term implications on physical health. Victims of VAW suffer from a range of health issues such as chronic pain, blood circulation problems, respiratory issues, and bone and muscle problems, including heart attack, thrombosis, bronchitis, hypertension, asthma, osteoporosis, and arthritis. In addition, VAW may also lead to malnutrition, low weight, and gastrointestinal issues among victims. Moreover, children who are exposed to VAW are particularly vulnerable to psychological distress, with symptoms such as dejections and temperamental issues often manifesting at a young age. It's essential to note that VAW is not a simple disease that can be cured with medications or vaccines. It requires a multifaceted approach that addresses not only the physical health consequences, but also the emotional and psychological well-being of the victims. Violence also imposes significant cost on individuals, families, communities, and countries. The cost of violence is often quantified using numerical rates or economic measures and is estimated to be substantial, with the economic cost alone currently estimated at USD 9.4 trillion, equivalent to 11% of the world's GDP. Violence against women, moreover, violent acts such as attacks can result in victims bearing medical expenses, which implies the possibility of further loss of income. This affects productivity and prevents women from participating in economic activities. While some communities in certain countries have access to support and treatment services for victims and domestic violence, the impact of violence extends beyond its immediate victims, affecting the well-being of their families and communities. In addition to direct costs associated with medical treatment and rehabilitation, violence generates indirect costs that affect society as a whole. These costs can include the financial burdens of providing police protection, legal services, and correctional programs, as well as reduced productivity and negative externalities. The economic consequences of violence can be significant, impairing the well-being of individuals and communities alike. While economic empowerment programs have the potential to prevent violence against women by providing them with economic independence, it is important to acknowledge that these programs may also carry certain risks, particularly for those who lack economic solvency. For victims of violence who are unable to achieve economic independence, on their own recovery may still be possible with the support of their immediate family, local communities, and government. In this regard, governments have a critical role to play in providing care for victims who represent a vital part of the labor force, human capital, and future generations. In March 2017, I had the opportunity of a lifetime to serve as OIC again, Human Rights Commissioner, and was assigned to go on a fact-finding missions with the Independent Permanent Human Rights Team to Muzaffarabad, the capital city of Kashmir, about 130 kilometers from Islamabad, on the border of Pakistan in India. Jammu and Kashmir is one of the oldest international dispute regions on the agendas of the OIC and the UN Security Council. The 43rd OIC Council of Foreign Ministers have requested the APIHRC to undertake a fact-finding visit to the Indian-occupied Kashmir to ascertain the human rights situations over there and to report the findings to the OIC Council of Foreign Ministers. We were tasked with investigations in instances of human rights violations, particularly in Kashmir, and tensions were running high. I was flown in a helicopter, which was both exhilarating and terrifying, not only to a place where I had never been before, but knowing that a helicopter ferrying diplomatic delegations, including the Malaysian High Commissioner to Pakistan and his wife, crashed in 2015. My nerves were shot and I was beyond nervous. The situation on the ground was tense and I could feel the weight of the responsibility that came with the job. Despite the fear, this experience taught me the true meaning of humility. In summary, my experience included receiving a report from the authorities in Muzaffarabad, which confirmed that human rights violations had taken place, including the violation of women's rights, such as sexual assault in the conflict zone. During the visit, we met with several authorities and they described the ignominious practice in gang rape. My visit to the center focused in the empowerment of women provided me with valuable insights into how women were encouraged and involved in becoming more self-sufficient through engagement in economic activities aimed at enhancing their mental and financial well-being. I am heartened by the fact that such initiatives are helping women, including those who may have been victims of violence or sexual assault, to improve their lives. Ladies and gentlemen, the case I already skipped is that the case related to double disadvantage cases, such as Islamophobia faced by Muslim women. Maybe I can read. Okay. It happened in August 2008. Mawal al-Sharbini, a young Muslim woman from Egypt, took her 2-year-old son Mustafa a play in a children's playground located in Dresden, Germany. In the incident, Marwa asked permission from Alex Wins, a young man of Russian descent, who suffered from psychotic mental disorder, to put Mustafa in the wings. However, Wins responded to Marwa's request with insults solely because he was a Muslim. Wins berated Marwa, who was wearing a hijab, calling her a prostitute and labeling Islam a terrorist entity. Despite several public witnesses intervening to try and resolve the confrontation, Wins continued to hurl abusive language at Marwa. The Muslim women later sued Wins in court in connection with these incidents. During the trial, her husband, who attempted to save his wife, sustained 16 stab wounds herself. Unfortunately, a security policeman had also mistakenly shot her husband, thinking that her husband was the culprit. The son, Mustafa, was also injured in the attack. Both husband and son were also taken to the hospital for further treatment. Meanwhile, Wins was able to bring a knife in the courtroom because no security checks had been performed on anyone in the courtroom prior to the trial. In November 2009, Wins was found guilty of murder and attempted murder and sentenced to life in prison. Despite the absence of Islamophobia incidents, women are still subjected to arbitrary violence, as seen in the case of an elderly woman in San Francisco who was attacked for no discernible cause, as reported in my book. Now that we have discussed on overview of the violence against women and the health and economic consequences, I would like to talk about the final topic, which is that the strategies to end violence against women. Although violence against women is endemic in many countries and in its communities, it is not a disease that can be cured or controlled with drugs and vaccines. These steps include efforts from social movements, particularly women's non-governmental organizations, through advocacies, awareness and education, as well as governmental legislation for society. Efforts to combat violence require a multifaceted approach, with key component being the enactment and enforcement of clear and effective laws. The prevalence of gender stereotypes and an imbalance of power between men and women in patriarchal societies often leads to discrimination and violence against women. In particular, domestic violence is a pervasive issue that is sometimes justified using religious and cultural interpretations. Apart from this, government should allocate a specific budget to address violence. This includes funding for advancing advocacy campaigns, which are essential for effectively dealing with the issue of violence against women. Moreover, government should focus on strengthening the roles of its health sectors in addressing violence. Government should provide guidance and training to all medical professionals on how to deal with violence. With adequate training, medical professionals such as those in psychology department can respond appropriately to such cases. Effective strategies can be implemented through collaboration between community and authorities to combat violence. Men can play a crucial role in the fight by activity, participating in prevention programs and taking responsibility for intervening and addressing the underlying causes of such incidents when they occur. It is not only the responsibility of adult men, but all the stakeholders to stop the abuse and provide adequate support to victims. Early awareness of this issue is necessary, and it should be taught to both children and adults through various channels, such as Friday sermons and university courses like Law and Violence Against Women, IIX 3009, and Islamic Law and Gender, IIM 4002, offered at University Malaya. The aim is not to blame all men, but to provide knowledge and unite society to address violence as a global problem that requires a collective action by working so society can reduce the eliminate violence. In March of this year, a colleague from Ukraine visited Kuala Lumpur to attend a workshop in interreligious and intercultural dialogue. Taking advantage of her presence, I engaged her in discussions regarding the ongoing armed conflict between Ukraine and Russia. More specifically, I inquired about any reported incidents of sexual assault that may have occurred during the conflict. According to my Ukrainian colleague, the epicenter of the ongoing armed conflict between Ukraine and Russia is primarily concentrated in the eastern region of Ukraine. Regrettably, instances of sexual assault against women and girls have been reported, transcending religious affiliations. It is worth noting that the overwhelming majority of such crimes have affected women and girls in particular. As Ukraine is not yet a member of the European Union, there exist no laws can overcome or provide protections to victims of war crimes relating to sexual assaults. In situations of armed conflict, religious leaders like imams and pastors have been observed to collaborate across faith to alleviate the sufferings of women and girls who are at risk of sexual assault. The primary goal is to ensure that all women have access to protection during such conflicts. According to this colleague of mine, victims of war crimes, including sexual assault, have a great deal of faith in religious leaders to assist them. She expressed her gratitude for our understanding and concern, but also acknowledged the emotional burden of speaking about the troubles of afflicting her country. The conditions in Ukraine have had a severe impact on all individuals, especially women and children. The human devastation caused by the conflict in Ukraine can be difficult to comprehend, and recounting the experience can be a source of great distress for those who have witnessed in firsthand. The violation of women's human rights during armed conflict emphasized the critical significance of interreligious and intercultural dialogue as an alternative approach to combat violence. The cooperation between various religions to learn, to listen, and to understand through IRD highlights its potential to combat violence. In situations of armed conflict, victims of violence may face unique challenges such as trauma that can be addressed through culturally sensitive and religiously appropriate interventions. IRD can facilitate the involvement of religious and community leaders in supporting victims and addressing the root causes of violence. Another strategy to combat violence involves the use of social media, which has become a vital tool for disseminating information and sharing campaigns. Even international film and television drama can be leveraged to raise awareness of the plight of victims of domestic violence. Media outlets also play a crucial role in expressing anti-violence sentiments and providing support to victims. Such platforms can be used to purpose beyond mere entertainment, as the plots of films and dramas often portray violence against women while also showcasing ways in which women can seek help and find support through their social networks. The act of violence towards women is not only a violation of human rights, but also a reflection to dynamics of community life as depicted in various films such as Enough, Moonlight, North Country, Taken, The Little Nyonya, The Desert Flower, Dokter, Defraud, Honor Killing, Ex-Violence, A Regular Woman, and recently, Girl in Basement. I have watched 4 of these movies, and I hope you can choose either of these movies or film to watch at your free time. Ladies and gentlemen, women's human rights, gender equality, oppressive patriarchy, if all the discussions on women and these days could be described in 3 phases, it would be this. Each of them evokes different images, raises different problems, and suggests different solutions. However, all of them aim to liberate women from the constraints that exist in the world. The perceptions that women are weak without opportunities and without progress is so traditional. And while there is a significant level of truth, there are few attempts to understand what it means to be a woman beyond contrasting it the male half of the human race. In other words, woman is often defined on the basis of what man is and also what man is not. This has led to the perceptions that women should either be like men or not like men, which further restricts the concept of what it means to be feminine. Therefore, the effort to provide equal opportunities, rights, and power to women must be based on a more comprehensive understanding of what it means to be a woman beyond simply being not a man. When we consider the relationship between men and women, it is akin to that of a bird with two wings. Each is essential to the bird's ability to fly and thrive. However, it is important to note that the wings are not identical in their form or function. Attempting to homogenize or negate these differences would be akin to attempting to graft the left wing onto the right or vice versa. Doing so will render the bird unable to fly and diminish its potential for growth and flourishing. Instead, we must embrace and celebrate the unique qualities and contributions of both men and women, recognizing that their differences allow for a dynamic interplay that can elevate both individuals and society. Why should the value of women be celebrated on only one designated day? Perhaps it is time that we change the understanding of the global culture by making Women's Day every day, by embodying the essence of femininity and womanhood, where these qualities are used to address the world's most pressing problems. To achieve this goal, we must equip ourselves with education, knowledge, and skills. Allah commands both genders for these tasks. As noted in the Quran, Surah Al-Imran, verse 110, believers, you are the best community singled out for people. You order what is right, forbid what is wrong, and believe in God. In the inspiring words of Her Majesty Queen Raihanah of Jordan, if you educate a woman, you educate a family. If you educate a girl, you educate the future. In conclusion, research stakeholders and those who are interested in the subject often struggle with several questions regarding violence against women. Their queries include the root causes behind why individuals engage in violent behavior towards women, as well as why these issues continue to persist in the 21st century. Undoubtedly, it is difficult to comprehend how such atrocity and suffering were inflicted upon women. Despite efforts to understand this phenomena, numerous questions remain unanswered, while some have been addressed. The issue of vow is a pervasive and phenomenon that poses a significant threat to physical, psychological, and social well-being of women worldwide. A range of abhorrent practices, including selective abortions, infanticide, honor killings, female genital mutilation, early and forced marriage, domestic violence, and other various types of vow have been extensively studied not only within the scholarly discourse pertaining to Islam, but also in other disciplinary contexts such as anthropology, sociology, gender studies, and human rights. Moreover, it is noteworthy that the Quran revelation seeks to elevate the status of women with the aim of ensuring their dignity and respect as human beings with full-fledged rights as explicitly enunciated in the Quran. I firmly believe that the theory of power and control is the most fitting way to depict incidents of vow, particularly in cases where women are expected to conform to their society and traditional roles concerning their husbands. Having heard first-hand narratives of violence against women in conflict zones, I attest that victims of such violence often live under shadow of deep trauma and fear. Despite the existence of numerous international instruments from the United Nations or to organizations like OIC and ASEAN, the local laws enacted to protect women and girls, incidents of vow continue to be prevalent. The persistence of vow is an intricate issue that is influenced by society's stereotypes and limited understanding of gender equality. Women often face societal expectations that restrict their roles and potential. To address this issue, I have spent many years advocating for rebranding of women as agents of change rather than the victims or their families and religions. I believe this can be achieved by strengthening the women's empowerment agenda, which must include more women as decision makers, encourage them to play active roles in various fields, including social, political, economic, and others. Until we achieve this, we cannot rest. We must keep fighting for a better future where survivors of war can rise again and live positive, fulfilling lives despite the indelible scars left deep in their injured souls. As the saying goes, if an egg is broken by an outside force, life ends. If broken from an inside force, life begins. Great things always begin from inside. Let it be the inside force that breaks the cycle of violence and creates a better future for women and children and all of humanity. Violence against women has been plagued on society for too long, leaving behind scars that are etched deep in the collective memory of communities. These scars are grim reminder of the historical events that have taken place, events that have their mark on society for generations to come. One such event occurred on November 25, 1960, in the Dominican Republic, where 3 courageous women were mercilessly killed while fighting against the oppressive and corrupt government regime. Their sacrifice did not go unnoticed. In fact, it was a turning point in the fight against gender-based violence. The Dominican Republic submitted resolutions to commemorate the brave action of these women at the United Nations, and for a period of 40 years leading to the establishment of the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women. Their bravery has inspired countless others to take up the fight against gender-based violence, and their legacy continues to resonate in Latin America and beyond. As we bring this discussion to a closure, I want to reiterate the words of former UN Secretary General, His Excellency Ban Ki-moon, who said in his speech commemorating the International Day of Elimination of Violence Against Women, "There is no universal truth applicable to all countries, cultures, and communities. Violence against women is never acceptable, never excusable, never tolerable. No amount of summits, conferences, or research can help the victims if the governing parties do not take responsibility. As the United Nations once emphasized, eliminating violence against women is the responsibility of every individual. The onus is the governments to work together with the men and women, as well as the youth of the communities in their respective countries, to free the victims and the potential victims from the threat of violence against women. Let us stand together, not just in words, but in action, to eradicate violence against women from our society. May we never forget that every victim is someone's sister, daughter, mother, or friend, or that it is our collective responsibility to ensure their safety and well-being. Distinguished guests, as I am ending my speech, there are 2 matters that I would like to share with all of you. Firstly, it is regarding the design of my inaugural lecture booklet cover. It was nicely designed by Amir Bashir Muhammad Zaim, the 4th year student from the Department of Sharia and Law, Academy of Islamic Studies, University Malaya. He has cleverly designed in such a way that it clearly shows the author was calming down one of the survivors of the human rights violations in the armed conflict zones. This photo, taken in 2017 during the author's fact-finding missions in Muzaffarabad, Pakistan, was one of the true living proof of the disastrous event taken place in such a horrible place. Secondly, from the bottom of my heart, I would humbly like to express my sincere appreciation to the Almighty, whose benevolence and mercy have enabled us to come together for these momentous occasions. Ampun Tuanku, Patik menjunjung kasih duli yang teramat mulia Tuanku Hajar Lailatul Syahrin Akasha Khalil, Raja Puan Muda Perlis, it is my great honor to have Tuanku here today at my inaugural lecture. I am truly grateful that Tuanku has taken the time to attend this important event. Your Royal Highness attendance has made this occasion even more special, and it will be remembered for years to come. Once again, menjunjung kasih Tuanku for being here today. Ampun Tuanku. Oh, I would also like to extend my sincere appreciation to my family for their unyielding prayers, selfless sacrifices, steadfast belief, wholehearted support, and profound comprehension of who I am, my work, my passion, and my interests. I am truly grateful for their presence in my life, and I cannot express my appreciations enough. I would like to extend my heartfelt thanks to the individuals whose tireless efforts and unwavering support have contributed to the success of this lecture. Izzati, Rahmah, Rosiana, Hasiah, Dr. Jawahi, David, Zunairah, Hafizah, Uyun, Farah, Shazwani, Afiqah Razli, Afiqah Mohidin, as well as the Sharia and Law Society, SALSO, for your invaluable contributions have not gone unnoticed, and I am truly grateful for your assistance. Furthermore, I would like to acknowledge the constant support of the Department of Sharia and Law, the Academy of Islamic Studies, and also to the University Malaya, whose unwavering commitment to academic excellence has helped me to achieve my goals and aspirations. I would also like to express my profound gratitude to the OIC and Regional Cooperations, Ministry of Foreign Affairs Malaysia, and Independent Permanent Human Rights Commission's OIC for granting me the privilege of serving for 7 years. It has been an honor to work alongside such esteemed organizations. I am truly grateful for the opportunity. Last but not least, I would like to thank my dear friends and colleagues in Malaysia, as well internationally, whose unwavering support and encouragement during my ups and downs have been a constant source of inspiration throughout my service period. Special dedications to all my past, present, and future students. I pray that you would excel in whatever field that you venture into, and may you become exemplary individuals who will bring positive change to the world. With this hope and clear as well as strong quotations from His Excellency Ban Ki-moon, once again, I express my deepest appreciation to all those who have contributed to the success of this lecture. I end my lecture with Wabillahi Taufiq wal Hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullah. I thank you.
We would like to express our utmost appreciation to Professor Datin Dr. Raihanah for delivering an outstanding lecture. Ladies and gentlemen, to complete our lecture today, we would like to invite again our Professor Engineer Dr. Shadiza Ibrahim to deliver her closing speech.
esteemed colleagues, distinguished guests, members of our academic community, and all students. Allow me now to give a very brief summary of Professor Raihanah's lecture. Professor Raihanah began her complex and emotional topic of the violence against women with a recounting heartbreaking incidents of violence from around the world, including domestic violence and other forms of gender-based violence. As she noted, these incidents occur in all cultures and all economic status and affect women everywhere, regardless of their location or background. It is particularly significant that the speaker emphasized on the Islamic perspective of VAW, or violence against women. She highlighted the fact that any act that goes beyond the limits of humanity is an act that is against Islam. Despite the existence of certain contentious issues within the Islamic discourse, including the female circumcision and the various interpretation of the term darabah in the Quran, it is noteworthy that this lecture emphasizes the uniqueness of the Sharia, specifically its unique flexibility and its ability in accommodating the contemporary demands and local cultures, subject to the condition that it does not contravene the principles of the Quran and Hadith. Violence against women is a pervasive and serious issue that requires a comprehensive approach in the international, regional, and national levels. The global recognition that such violence is a violation of women's human rights has brought attention to the fact that these incidents are not private matters, but a public concern. NGOs and other stakeholders have played a critical role in raising awareness and advocating for policies to address these issues. Despite the progress made in implementing legal and policy initiatives, the prevalence of violence against women continues to rise. Thus, there is an urgent need to develop holistic strategies to prevent these incidents from occurring. Gender equality should be a fundamental principle that guides all human interactions, and women should be respected, empowered, and included in peace-building efforts. During the lecture, the emphasis on the interreligious approach and intercultural dialogues as a strategy to combat violence against women has been interesting. As an institution, we take pride in the presence of the Center for Civilizational Dialogue, which can serve as a valuable resource in this regard. Together, we have the power to challenge the status quo and create a society that is just, equitable, and safe for all women. Let us remember that the effects of violence against women are not confined to the victims alone, but are felt by the entire society, and it is our collective responsibility to take action. As a reminder, it is worth reiterating the speaker's reference to the Prophet Muhammad SAW last sermon, Wada, I bequeath to be kind to women. Finally, I would like to extend my heartfelt appreciation to our esteemed speaker, yang berbahagia, Professor Datin Dr. Raihanah, for her insightful lecture on violence against women and for her unwavering dedication to advancing the cause of women's rights. Her work serves as a testament to the power of activism and academic inquiry in effecting positive changes in our society. I'm confident that her invaluable contributions will continue to inspire us all in our efforts to create a more equitable and just world for us all. With that, congratulations and thank you, Professor Datin Raihanah. Ampun, Tuanku.
Ampun Tuanku. To witness today's inaugural lecture, we humbly invite Your Royal Highness for a photo group session, and I please to invite Professor Engineer Dr. Shariza and Professor Datin Dr. Raihanah to join Her Royal Highness for the photo session ceremony, followed by University Malaya Anthem, and please rise. Ampun tuanku, disembah maklumkan bahawa demikianlah sempurnanya syarahan perdana pada pagi ini. Ampun tuanku, beribu-ribu ampun, sembah patik, mohon diampun. Mengumumkan keberangkatan duli yang tak amat mulia, Tuanku Raja Puan Muda Perlis diiringi Div di Hormat berangkat meninggalkan majlis.